Hey there, wanderers of the night and seekers of stories. If you find yourself drifting into this tale of ancient wonders, remember to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below to share your thoughts. Let's ease into the rhythms of a bygone era together. Imagine, if you will, the gentle hum of Cairo's markets at dawn, where the world awakens not with a clamor, but with a soft symphony of possibility. In the 13th and 14th centuries, under the vast skies of Mamluk Egypt, a merchant's life unfolded like a tapestry, woven from threads of spice and silk. Picture the air, warm and laden with the faint golden scent of saffron wafting from woven baskets, mingling with the earthy whisper of cumin and the subtle resinous hint of frankincense burning in low flames. These were the souks of Cairo, labyrinthine alleys, where traders in flowing silk turbans moved with the grace of shadows, their voices rising and falling in the timeless dance of barter. It was a world of resilience, where merchants navigated the ebb and flow of trade with the quiet determination of a river carving through desert sands. Drawing from the pages of Ibn Battuta's Rihla, we glimpse these figures as he did during his travels in the 14th century, encountering men who carried the weight of distant lands on their shoulders. Ibn Battuta spoke of Cairo as a city pulsing with life, its markets a crossroads of cultures, where goods from the farthest reaches arrived as if by some benevolent wind. A merchant might rise before the first light, his silk turban neatly wound, its fabric cool against his skin, a symbol of status earned through years of careful dealings. He would step into the souk, the ground beneath his sandals dusted with fine particles that caught the morning sun, creating a haze that softened the edges of the world. In these bustling yet serene spaces, the air was alive with sensory delights that invited contemplation rather than haste. The scent of freshly ground spices lingered like a comforting embrace, cardamom's sweet sharpness blending with the warm, nutty aroma of roasted nuts piled high in brass trays. Stalls stood in orderly rows, their wooden frames creaking softly under the weight of colorful textiles, each one a story of journeys across seas and deserts. A trader, perhaps from the Nile's fertile banks, would lean forward to haggle over a bundle of cloves, his words flowing like a gentle stream. For a fair price, my friend, these will bring warmth to your home. The exchange was not mere commerce, it was an art, a ritual of mutual respect that spoke of resilience born from uncertainty. These merchants, as the Cairo Genizah records reveal through fragments of letters and accounts, built networks that spanned continents. Their trade in luxuries, like silks and gems, sustaining the city's heartbeat. Yet amid this vivid tapestry, there lies a quiet mystery that adds a layer of intrigue to the merchant's tale, the enigma of unrecorded names. In the annals of history, as preserved in the Genizah's scattered documents, many of these traders remain faceless, their identities lost to the sands of time. Ibn Battuta himself noted the transience of such lives, where a merchant might arrive from Damascus or Baghdad. His name whispered in passing, but never etched in stone. Why, one might wonder, in the stillness of night, did these architects of commerce fade into obscurity? Perhaps it was the nature of their world, where success was measured not in monuments, but in the subtle accumulation of wealth and knowledge. A merchant's ledger might list transactions with meticulous care, yet his own name could vanish, leaving only the echo of his dealings. This mystery, drawn from the Genesis, Hebrew, and Arabic scripts, invites us to ponder the impermanence of human endeavors, a gentle reminder that even the most resilient souls can slip through the fingers of history. As the day progressed in Cairo's souks, the merchants' resilience shone through in their daily rhythms. They bartered not with aggression, but with a calm persistence that mirrored the Nile's unhurried flow. Imagine the feel of a silk turban brushing against one's cheek as a trader adjusted it under the midday sun. The fabric smooth and cool despite the rising heat around them. The market unfolded like a dream, with stalls draped in tapestries that caught the light in shimmering waves, their colors evoking the vibrancy of far-off lands, deep crimsons from India, emerald greens from Persia. The air carried the faint, metallic tang of copper coins exchanging hands, accompanied by the soft rustle of parchment as deals were sealed. These traders, as Ibn Battuta observed, were masters of adaptation, their lives a testament to endurance in the face of shifting winds. A poor harvest in one region might mean rerouting caravans, but they pressed on, their spirits unbroken, finding solace in the simple act of trade. Sensory details abound in these recollections, painting a picture that soothes the mind. The dusty stalls, with their layers of fine sand settled like a blanket, released a subtle, earthy aroma with each step, grounding one in the present. Vendors might offer a taste of preserved fruits, their sweetness bursting forth with a hint of tartness, a momentary delight that lingered on the tongue. In the background, the distant call of a water seller echoed softly, his voice a lullaby amid the murmurs, offering relief from the day's warmth. The Genesis records, with their glimpses into everyday transactions, reveal how merchants fostered community, their stalls becoming gathering points where stories were shared over cups of mint tea, its refreshing scent cutting through the spice-laden air. Resilience, that quiet strength, defined their existence. Drawing from Ibn Battuta's accounts, we see merchants who weathered economic tides, their adaptability ensuring survival. A trader might spend months at sea or on camelback, only to return to Cairo's embrace, where the familiar scents of the souk welcomed him like an old friend. Their lives were intertwined with the city's pulse, contributing to its prosperity without seeking the spotlight. In this, there is a subtle wit to their story, the irony that those who moved the world's goods often moved through it unseen, their names as ephemeral as the morning mist over the Nile. As evening fell, the markets transformed into havens of reflection. The saffron scents grew softer, blending with the cooling air, while lanterns cast a warm glow over the silk turbans and piled goods. Merchants would linger, perhaps sharing a meal of flatbread and olives, the oil's rich flavor a reward for the day's labors. Here, in these moments, the mystery of unrecorded names deepened, for it was in such gatherings that personal histories were woven, only to dissolve into the collective memory. Yet this very elusiveness adds a poetic beauty, reminding us that resilience often flourishes in anonymity. To expand upon this world, consider the unique textures of trade goods that passed through these hands. A bolt of silk, smooth as water, might have traveled from China, its journey marked by the faint, lingering saltiness of ocean winds, or the weight of a gemstone, cool and unyielding, sourced from the mountains of Yemen. Each one a story of perilous paths, overcome with steadfast resolve. The Genuine documents speak of such items in mundane lists, but in our retelling, they become symbols of enduring spirit. As we draw near the end of this gentle exploration, let us pause to appreciate the merchant's legacy. Their world, so richly detailed in Ibn Battuta's Rihla and the Cairo Geniza, offers a calming narrative of human ingenuity. And while their names may remain a mystery, their influence echoes onward. Perhaps in the next whisper of this series, we'll uncover more layers of this fascinating era, drifting further into the tapestry of history. Word count 1,523 in the heart of Mamluk, Cairo, where the citadel rose like a silent guardian over the city. The air hung thick with the sweet swirl of sandalwood incense, its tendrils dancing lazily through the cool stone corridors. Sultan al-Nasir Muhammad sat upon his ornate throne, his figure draped in robes of embroidered silk that caught the flicker of oil lamps, each thread a whisper of authority and grace. The year was 1320, deep in his reign, and as he leaned forward to scrutinize a scroll of trade decrees, the marble floors echoed softly with the distant call of evening prayers, a soothing rhythm that seemed to cradle the world in its embrace. From his elevated dais, the Sultan oversaw the intricate web of commerce that sustained his empire, his eyes, sharp yet serene, tracing the lines of script that detailed the flow of goods from distant lands. Al-Nasir Muhammad, born in the shadow of turmoil in 1285, and ascending to power in 1310 after years of factional strife, had turned his gaze not to the clash of swords, but to the quiet hum of markets and bazaars. Drawing from the chronicles of al-Makrzi, who later captured the essence of this era with meticulous detail, we see a ruler who understood that true strength lay in the steady pulse of trade winds and the clink of coins in merchants' pouches. His economic policies unfolded like a gentle tapestry, woven with threads of innovation and stability. In those early years, as the sun dipped low over the citadel's parapets, casting golden hues across the polished stone, Al-Nasir Muhammad decreed reforms that breathed new life into the empire's finances. He abolished outdated taxes that had strangled the spice routes from India and the silk paths from China, replacing them with a more equitable system based on assessed wealth. As al-Makrizi noted in his Al-Suluk, the air in the throne room grew fragrant with the scent of myrrh brought in by traders, a subtle reminder of the goods that now flowed more freely under his watchful eye. Imagine the scene. The Sultan, his embroidered robes shimmering like starlight on water, gesturing with a bejeweled hand as advisors presented ledgers, the soft rustle of papyrus and the faint murmur of voices created a lullaby of governance, where each decision aimed to foster prosperity. He encouraged the cultivation of cash crops, such as sugar cane, along the Nile's fertile banks, whose sweet aroma sometimes wafted up to the citadel on warm breezes. Al-Makrizi's accounts highlight how these policies not only boosted agricultural output, but also stabilized prices, preventing the kind of famines that had plagued earlier reigns. With a subtle wit, one might say the Sultan treated the economy like a garden, pruning excesses and nurturing growth, all while the marble echoed with the measured steps of courtiers, their sandals whispering secrets of abundance. Yet amid this calm, there lingered a mystery that added a layer of intrigue to his rule, the enigma of the unwritten trade edicts. These were the decrees that never found their way into the official records, verbal commands whispered in the dim light of the throne room, their details lost to time like echoes fading in the vast halls. Al-Makrizi himself puzzled over them, noting in his chronicles how certain trade agreements with Byzantine merchants or Venetian envoys seemed to materialize without trace, as if conjured from the air itself. Perhaps they were born of impromptu discussions, where the Sultan, in his embroidered splendor, nodded approvingly to a proposal that altered tariffs on Persian carpets or olive oil from Syria. The mystery lay not in malice, but in the Sultan's intuitive style, a wit so subtle that it left historians guessing, much like the way incense smoke curls and vanishes, leaving only its scent behind. As the nights grew longer, the citadel's lamps cast a warm glow, and Al-Nasir Muhammad's policies extended to the regulation of guilds and workshops. He established oversight committees to ensure fair weights and measures in the markets, drawing from Al-Makrizi's descriptions of how this curbed corruption and fostered trust. The sound of water trickling from the courtyard fountains provided a soothing backdrop, as if the very stones conspired to hush the day's labors. Under his guidance, Cairo became a hub where gold dinars from North Africa mingled with Chinese porcelain, and the economy thrived on the principles of mutual benefit. One could almost hear the soft chime of coins in the distance, a lullaby that spoke of wealth shared and sustained. Expanding on these reforms, the Sultan invested in infrastructure that underpinned trade, such as the maintenance of canals and roads that linked Cairo to the Red Sea ports. Al-Makrizi recounts how these projects, funded through prudent fiscal management, allowed for the efficient transport of goods, reducing losses and encouraging more ventures. The air in the citadel often carried the faint, earthy scent of freshly turned soil from the irrigated fields, a testament to his vision. With a touch of wry observation, it might be said that Al-Nasir Muhammad wielded his quill like a gardener's tool, cultivating an empire where prosperity bloomed without the need for thunderous displays of power. But the mystery of the unwritten edicts deepened as years passed. Whispers among the courtiers, carried on the gentle breeze through the arched windows, suggested that some decrees were intentionally left unrecorded, perhaps to maintain flexibility in negotiations or to shield sensitive alliances. Al-Makrizi, in his Kitab al-Mawais, hints at instances where a simple nod from the Sultan altered the course of trade with the Golden Horde. Yet no document survived to confirm it. This veil of secrecy added a poetic allure to his reign, like the way moonlight played upon the marble, revealing just enough to intrigue without fully illuminating the truth. Through it all, Al-Nasir Muhammad remained a figure of composed elegance, his embroidered robes a canvas of intricate patterns that mirrored the complexity of his policies. The sensory symphony of the citadel, the cool touch of stone underfoot, the melodic chant of muezzins echoing from the minarets, wove around him like a protective cloak. His economic strategies, as detailed in Al-Makrizi's works, included incentives for artisans and traders, such as reduced duties on imports that spurred innovation. The scent of baking bread from the city below often drifted up, a humble reminder of how his reforms touched everyday life, ensuring that even the humblest vendor felt the ripple of his decisions. As his reign progressed into the 1330, the Sultan's focus on economic resilience became even more pronounced. He reformed the currency system, standardizing the weight of gold and silver coins to prevent debasement, a move that Al-Makrizi praised for its foresight. The soft clink of these coins, tested in the citadel's assay offices, provided a rhythmic counterpoint to the day's deliberations. Yet the unwritten edicts continued to perplex, their absence in the archives like a missing note in a melody, leaving a space for speculation that only enhanced the Sultan's legacy. In this era of quiet transformation, Al-Nasir Muhammad's policies not only weathered the challenges of inflation and scarcity, but also laid the groundwork for future prosperity. The citadel, with its incense-laden air and echoing halls, stood as a sanctuary of thoughtful rule, where the Sultan's subtle wit shone through in the elegance of his decisions. As the stars twinkled above, casting a serene light upon his embroidered robes, one could sense the enduring impact of his vision, a lullaby of economic harmony that echoed long after his decrees were sealed. And so, as the night deepened and the citadel settled into peaceful repose, the story of Sultan Al-Nasir Muhammad's reign fades gently, like the last swirl of incense, into the annals of history. Yet it whispers onward, inviting curiosity about what lies beyond these walls, where other tales of Cairo's vibrant life await their turn. In the hushed twilight of 14th century Cairo, where the Nile's gentle murmur blended with the city's ancient rhythms, the caravanserais stood as forgotten guardians of the trade routes. These sprawling inns, with their high walls and arched gateways, once welcomed weary travelers from distant lands, their courtyards echoing with the soft cadence of arrivals and departures. Now, amid the shifting sands, they lingered as shadows of a vibrant past, their stones whispering tales of commerce and mystery. Imagine, if you will, a merchant from the distant hills of Anatolia, his tunic frayed from the long journey, guiding his camel train into one such inn. The animal's deep, rhythmic grunts filled the air as he eased the burdens from its back sacks of aromatic myrrh and bolts of silk that rustled like whispers in the wind. The courtyard, dusted with fine grains of sand that danced in the fading light, exuded a calm serenity, the kind that settled over the soul after days of relentless travel. The air carried the subtle scent of baked earth and distant spices, a blend that lingered like a half-forgotten dream, inviting rest rather than haste. These caravanserais, known in Arabic as khans, dotted the labyrinthine streets of Cairo, their structures built from sturdy limestone that had weathered centuries of sun and storm. Archaeological reports from sites like those excavated in the 20th century reveal their design. Vast open spaces encircled by stables and chambers, where merchants could secure their goods and find shelter. The Cairo Genizah records, those priceless fragments preserved in the Ben Ezra synagogue, offer glimpses into their daily life, noting transactions and arrivals with the meticulous hand of scribes. One such document describes a khan near the city's western gates, where goods from India and China were stored, the ink fading, but the details enduring. As evening fell, the merchants would gather in the courtyards, their voices low and measured, sharing stories over simple meals of flatbread and dates. The flame of oil lamps flickered gently, casting a warm glow on the worn flagstones, while the distant call of the muezzin floated through the air like a soothing lullaby. One could almost feel the cool breeze off the Nile, carrying with it the faint, earthy tang of the river's waters, a reminder of the life's steady flow amid the inn's quiet decay. Yet even then, signs of decline were evident. Cracks in the arches spoke of neglect, and the Genizah texts hint at fewer caravans arriving each year. The mystery of these lost caravanserais lies not in their existence, but in their vanishing, a puzzle pieced together from sparse archaeological findings and the Genizah's cryptic notes. Why did these once thriving hubs fade into obscurity? Reports from excavations at places like the Bab al-Nasser area uncover foundations buried under layers of sediment, suggesting that economic shifts in the late 14th century played a role. The Black Death, sweeping through Cairo in the 1340, left its mark, as evidenced by the sudden drop in documented transactions. One Geniza fragment, dated to 1348, lists a khan that went from housing dozens of merchants to standing empty, its halls echoing with silence. In those courtyards where camels once knelt with a soft, padded thud, the air grew still, heavy with the scent of undisturbed dust and forgotten spices. The merchants, in their tunics of coarse wool and linen, would have unloaded their wares under a sky painted with the soft hues of dusk, the stars emerging like gentle watchers. Archaeological digs have unearthed remnants, shards of pottery inscribed with trade symbols, coins worn smooth by handling that paint a picture of abundance turned to absence. Yet the unknowns persist. Why were some khans abandoned abruptly, their structures left to crumble without trace, while others adapted or were repurposed? Consider the sensory tapestry of these places. The faint crunch of sand underfoot, the warm press of the evening air against the skin, the subtle wit in a merchant's tale of a camel that outsmarted a thief, shared with a wry smile around a low fire. The Geniza records, with their dry listings of goods and debts, reveal a world where prosperity waned not from war or decree, avoiding the tales of specific rulers, but from the inexorable pull of changing trade winds. As routes shifted toward the sea and overland paths grew perilous due to banditry, as noted in archaeological surveys of the era, the caravanserais found themselves on the periphery of commerce. One particular mystery, drawn from the Genesis accounts, centers on a cluster of khans near the old city walls, where records abruptly end in the 1370. Excavations have turned up sealed chambers filled with untouched goods, jars of preserved olives and bundles of cloth, suggesting a sudden halt to activity. Was it a plague that emptied the halls, or perhaps a shift in river currents that isolated the routes? The evidence, pieced from fragmented texts and soil layers, offers no clear answer, leaving a veil of intrigue that soothes the mind with its unresolved elegance. In the quiet of these ruins, one might hear the whisper of wind through cracked arches, a sound like a distant sigh, reminding us that not all mysteries demand resolution. As the decades passed, the decline deepened, with archaeological reports indicating that by the early 15th century, many sites were little more than overgrown shells. The courtyards, once alive with the soft clink of harnesses and the murmur of negotiations, fell silent, their sensory richness fading like the last light of day. The Geniza documents, preserved against time, speak of rising costs and dwindling visitors, a gradual unraveling that historians attribute to broader economic strains, such as fluctuating currency values inferred from coin hoards. Yet, in this calm narrative of loss, there is a subtle wit. The idea that these sturdy inns built to last, outwitted their own obsolescence by simply fading away, their secrets buried like treasures in the sand. To wander these lost spaces in one's imagination is to feel the cool stone beneath one's palms, the air thick with the lingering aroma of camel hides and exotic resins, a blend that evokes a peaceful nostalgia. Archaeological findings from sites like those near the citadel reveal similar patterns. Structures that were once bustling now lie in repose, their mysteries intact. The Cairo Geniza adds layers, with mentions of forgotten ledgers that list goods never claimed, posing questions about lost fortunes and unseen hands guiding their fate. In the end, the enigma of Cairo's lost caravanserais rests not in dramatic tales, but in the gentle erosion of time, a mystery as calming as the night breeze off the Nile. As we contemplate these echoes of the past, with their dusty courtyards and the soft grunts of long-gone caravans, our thoughts turn naturally to the threads that connect one story to the next, inviting further exploration into the tapestry of history. In the heart of Cairo, under the vast expanse of a starlit sky, the ancient Khan stood as a sanctuary of whispered opulence, its stone walls echoing the rhythms of a bygone era. Built in the 14th century amidst the bustling Mamluk dominion, this grand structure welcomed the elite with open arches, where shadows danced gently in the flicker of oil lamps. The air, heavy with the warm aroma of cardamom and cinnamon, carried a sense of timeless serenity, as if the night itself cradled the secrets of prosperity within its folds. Wealthy traders, clad in flowing silk robes embroidered with threads of gold, gathered in the cool stone courtyards, their presence a testament to the Khan's allure. These men, not the everyday merchants of the streets, moved with a quiet grace, their garments whispering against the polished marble floors. The robes, dyed in deep crimsons and indigos, caught the soft glow of the lamps, casting subtle patterns that mimicked the intricate geometric designs etched into the surrounding arches. Each trader settled onto low cushions, arranged in semicircles around low tables laden with delicacies, their faces illuminated just enough to reveal expressions of contented repose. The courtyard, vast and open to the heavens, was a masterpiece of Mamluk architecture. As al-Makrizi once noted in his chronicles, he described such places as havens where the elite could escape the city's clamor. And indeed, this Khan embodied that ideal. The stone pillars, cool and unyielding under the touch, rose like silent guardians, their surfaces worn smooth by generations of privileged footsteps. Oil lamps, suspended from iron chains, swayed ever so slightly in the evening breeze, their flames steady and hypnotic, casting a golden haze that softened the edges of reality. The scent of spices lingered not just from the meals, but from the very air, infused with the essence of far-flung lands, cloves from the Indies, saffron from Persia, and myrrh that evoked ancient rituals. Dining unfolded with a ritualistic calm, the traders partaking in feasts that spoke of abundance without haste. Platters of roasted lamb, glazed with honey and sprinkled with crushed pistachios, sat alongside bowls of creamy yogurt infused with rosewater, their surfaces glistening like jewels. The gentle clink of silverware against porcelain was muffled by the thick tapestries that lined the walls. Fabrics woven with threads of silk and gold that depicted mythical gardens and celestial motifs. As al-Makrizi recounted, these khans were repositories of luxury, where the finest goods from across the Islamic world converged. Yet here, in this moment, the focus was on the serene enjoyment rather than the commerce that brought such treasures. One could almost hear the faint rustle of palm fronds overhead, though the khan's inner garden was enclosed, its fountain bubbling softly like a lullaby. The water, drawn from ancient aqueducts, trickled into a central basin, its surface rippling under the lamplight, reflecting the traders' silhouettes in a dance of light and shadow. The aroma of baking bread mingled with the sharper notes of mint tea, brewed in ornate samovars that exhaled steam like quiet sighs. Each sensory detail wove together, creating a tapestry of comfort that enveloped the scene, where the opulence was not brash, but enveloping, like a warm blanket drawn over the soul. Yet beneath this veneer of tranquility, there lingered a subtle mystery, one that al-Makrizi hinted at in his writings, the enigma of the lost Khan inventories. These were not mere lists of goods, but comprehensive records of the Khan's vast holdings, detailing silks, gems, and rare manuscripts that had passed through its gates. As the historian observed, such documents were once meticulously maintained, safeguarded in locked chests within the Khan's innermost chambers. But over time, they vanished, leaving behind only whispers among the learned. Perhaps they were spirited away in the dead of night, or perhaps they decayed in forgotten corners, their secrets dissolving into the dust of ages. This mystery added a layer of intrigue to the opulence, a gentle reminder that even in prosperity, the sands of time could erase the most carefully guarded truths. The traders, unaware or unconcerned in their repose, continued their meal under the watchful eyes of the Khan's attendants, who moved like shadows in the periphery. These servants, dressed in simple linen tunics, poured wines from distant vineyards, their movements fluid and unobtrusive. The wine, a deep ruby red, carried hints of sun-ripened grapes and aged oak, its warmth spreading through the body like a soothing balm. The air grew heavier with the scent of jasmine blossoms from the garden pots, their petals unfurling in the night, releasing a fragrance that blended seamlessly with the spices. As the evening deepened, the oil lamps burned lower, their flames flickering in a rhythmic pulse that mirrored the traders' steady breaths. The stone courtyards, cool against the skin, offered a respite from the day's heat, and the soft murmur of conversation, fragments of poetry, and tales of distant seas drifted like smoke. Al-Makrzi, in his detailed accounts, spoke of how these gatherings fostered a sense of communal elegance, where the elite could indulge in the finer aspects of life without the intrusions of the outside world. Here, the opulence was palpable in every detail. The intricate carvings on the wooden screens, the plush carpets underfoot that cushioned each step, and the silver ewers that held scented waters for refreshment. One might imagine the traders reclining further, their silk robes pooling around them like liquid gold, as they savored morsels of fruit preserved in syrup, the sweetness lingering on the palate. The courtyard's acoustics amplified the faintest sounds, the trickle of the fountain, the occasional sigh of contentment, creating a symphony of calm. Yet the mystery of the inventories wove through it all, a subtle thread in the fabric of the Khan's history. Al-Makrzi noted that attempts to recover these records had been futile, as if they had been swallowed by the very stones of Cairo, leaving scholars to ponder what treasures might have been lost forever. In this haven of luxury, time seemed to stretch and bend, much as the historian described in his observations of Mamluk society. The Khan, with its towering minarets piercing the night sky, stood as a monument to refined living, where every element conspired to soothe the senses. The air, now cool and fragrant, carried the distant call of a nightingale, its song a melodic counterpoint to the gentle hum of the fountain. Such details, drawn from Al-Makrzi's vivid recollections, painted a picture of a world where opulence was not merely seen, but felt in the weight of a silk hem or the warmth of a spiced infusion. As the lamps dimmed further, casting longer shadows across the courtyard, the traders began to withdraw, their forms merging with the darkness. The mystery of the lost inventories remained, a quiet enigma that added depth to the scene, hinting at the impermanence even in grandeur. And as the night deepened, one might feel a gentle pull toward the morrow, where other tales awaited, perhaps in the quiet alleys beyond the Khan's walls. The courtyard, now bathed in the soft glow of the waning lamps, held its secrets close, inviting reflection on the ephemeral nature of wealth. Al-Makrzi's words echoed faintly. In such places, life unfolded like a dream, rich with sensory delights and unspoken mysteries. The traders, in their silk-clad repose, embodied the essence of Mamluk elegance, their dining a ritual of calm abundance. Spices lingered in the air, a reminder of lands afar, while the stone beneath spoke of enduring history. Yet the lost inventories whispered of what might slip away, a subtle wit in the grand design of fate. In the end, as the first hints of dawn crept over the horizon, the Khan settled into silence, its opulence a lullaby for the soul, preparing the way for stories yet to unfold. In the heart of 14th century Cairo, where the sun rose gently over the minarets and the Nile's whisper carried through the air, the souks awakened with a quiet rhythm, as if the city itself were breathing. Merchants in simple cotton tunics, their fabrics woven from the year's harvest, moved through the narrow alleys with the steady grace of a river's flow. Each day unfolded like a familiar melody, soft and unhurried, where the clink of coins against wooden counters echoed like distant chimes, and the dusty air carried the faint scent of cumin and aged leather. For Ahmed al-Fustat, a seasoned trader of fine linens, the routine began before dawn's first light. He rose from his modest home near the city's edge, where the cool stone floors still held the night's chill, and dressed in his well-worn tunic, its threads soft from years of wear. The garment, dyed a muted earth tone, hung loosely over his frame, practical for the long hours ahead. As he stepped into the pre-dawn haze, the air was thick with the promise of warmth, a subtle embrace that hinted at the day's labors. He gathered his goods, bolts of cotton and silk, bartered from distant weavers into a sturdy sack, the fabric rustling softly like leaves in a breeze. The walk to the souk was a meditative ritual, the cobblestone paths winding through neighborhoods where cats prowled silently, and the occasional call of a muezzin lingered in the distance. Ahmed's sandals padded against the stones, each step a gentle percussion that blended with the city's awakening pulse. By the time he reached the Khan al-Khalili, the market's heart, the sun had crested the horizon, casting a golden glow over the stalls. Here, under canvas awnings that fluttered like weary birds, merchants arranged their wares with careful precision. Ahmed unfurled his linens on a low table, the cloth sliding smoothly across the wood, its surface catching the light in soft waves. The air grew warmer, carrying whispers of baking bread from nearby ovens and the earthy tang of the ground spices piled high in neighboring stalls. Bartering was an art as old as the pyramids, conducted not with haste, but with the calm cadence of a storyteller. Ahmed leaned against his table, his hands resting lightly on the fabric, feeling the faint texture under his fingertips. A customer approached, a fellow trader from the Delta, his tunic equally plain, but embroidered with subtle patterns that spoke of his origins. They exchanged greetings with a nod, their voices low and measured, as if sharing secrets in a quiet library. "What fine cloth you have here," the man said, running his fingers over the edge of a bolt, the material yielding like a sigh. Ahmed smiled faintly, his wit surfacing in a gentle quip, as enduring as the sands, yet softer than the evening breeze, surely worth more than a handful of dirhams. The negotiation unfolded slowly, a dance of words and gestures. Coins clinked softly as they were counted out, each one a small metallic song that rang through the air before settling into silence. Ahmed inspected the payment with a practiced eye, the cool metal pressing against his palm, evoking memories of past deals sealed under similar skies. Around them, the souk hummed with similar exchanges, a spice merchant haggling over cinnamon sticks, their aromatic oils releasing a warm, spicy perfume that mingled with the dust, a jeweler displaying amulets that caught the sunlight in fleeting sparks, their gleam subtle against the muted backdrop. Throughout the morning, the routines wove together like threads in a tapestry. Merchants paused for brief moments, sipping mint tea from clay cups that warmed their hands, the steam rising like gentle fog, the tea's herbal scent cut through the dusty atmosphere, offering a soothing interlude amid the barters. Ahmed watched as children darted between stalls, their laughter a light ripple in the air, carrying baskets of dates or fresh figs for sale. He recalled from the old records, fragments preserved in hidden Genaza caches, how such daily rhythms had sustained Cairo's trade for centuries. Those documents, scraps of paper and parchment tucked away in synagogue storerooms, spoke of linens and spices moving through hands much like his. Though many transactions slipped into the shadows, unlogged and unspoken, it was this mystery that lent a quiet intrigue to the Sauk's life. The unrecorded market logs, those elusive ledgers of deals struck in whispers, or sealed with a mere glance. In the Cairo Genaza, historians later pieced together hints of it. Merchants like Ahmed, who kept mental tallies or jotted notes on scraps that vanished into the wind, evading the scribe's quills. Perhaps it was a safeguard against taxes or rivals, or simply the way of a world where not everything needed to be written to be real. Ahmed himself harbored such secrets, a ledger of favored clients and hidden sources, known only in the back of his mind. As he wrapped a sold bolt for a customer, he felt a subtle thrill, like the brush of a desert wind, knowing that some bargains existed only in the ether, their details dissolving like morning mist. The midday sun climbed higher, bathing the Sauks in a warm, golden haze that softened sharp edges and slowed the pace. Merchants wiped sweat from their brows with the hems of their tunics, the fabric absorbing the moisture with a faint, comforting weight. The air thickened with the scent of roasting meats from food vendors, their grills sizzling softly, releasing tendrils of smoke that danced upward. Ahmed paused to share a meal with a nearby trader, breaking flatbread that crunched gently between their teeth. Its warmth, a simple pleasure amid the day's flow. They spoke of rains in the north, or the price of indigo, their conversation laced with the subtle wit of those who knew the market's ebb and flow. The coins may clink today, Ahmed remarked with a wry smile, but tomorrow they might as well be whispers in the wind. As afternoon settled in, the bartering continued, each transaction a thread in the larger weave of Cairo's economy. A group of women in similar cotton attire arrived, their tunics adorned with discreet patterns, bargaining for fabrics to turn into garments. Their voices blended into the Sauk symphony, a harmonious murmur punctuated by the occasional rustle of cloth or the soft thud of a sealed deal. Sensory details enveloped everything. The warm press of bodies in the crowd, the faint grit of dust on fingertips, the distant call of a water seller with his jingling bells. Ahmed's routine included these small observations, each one a note in his daily melody, drawn from the Genesis accounts of how merchants navigated the markets with intuition and experience. Yet beneath the calm surface, the mystery of the unrecorded logs persisted, a gentle enigma that added depth to the ordinary. In those hidden transactions, one might imagine alliances formed in the shade of an archway, deals that shaped fortunes without a trace. Ahmed often pondered it during lulls, his gaze drifting to the sky where birds circled lazily, their wings cutting through the air with effortless grace. The Genesis fragments hinted at such practices, revealing how some merchants evaded full documentation, leaving gaps that intrigued later scholars. It was not a dark secret, but a clever adaptation, as natural as the sun's arc across the heavens. As the day waned, the souk began to quiet, shadows lengthening like old friends. Ahmed packed his remaining goods, the fabrics folding neatly into his sack, their textures familiar under his hands. The air cooled slightly, carrying the evening's first breezes, scented with jasmine from nearby gardens. He exchanged farewells with his fellows, their voices soft and content, before making his way home. The routine ended as it began, in reflection and repose, the mysteries of the day settling like dust. And so, as the stars emerged above Cairo, twinkling like forgotten coins, one might drift into thoughts of what tomorrow's trades might hold, the unrecorded logs waiting to weave their subtle tales once more. Perhaps, in the quiet of night, the next segment of this story unfolds, where other rhythms call from beyond the souks. Word count 1,500 under the vast expanse of the Egyptian sky, where the sun dipped low in a haze of gold and amber. A line of camels stretched like a quiet river through the sands. Mamluk merchants, draped in heavy woolen cloaks that whispered against the wind, led their charges with steady hands and murmured words. These were men of the trade, their faces etched by years of desert journeys, guiding beasts laden with bolts of silk, jars of spices, and bundles of precious metals. The air carried the faint scent of myrrh and heated earth, a soothing rhythm that lulled the mind as the caravan moved onward, each step a deliberate dance across the dunes. In the heart of the 14th century, under the rule of the Mamluk sultans, such expeditions formed the lifeblood of commerce, threading through lands where the Nile's fertile embrace gave way to endless wilderness. Drawing from the accounts of Ibn Battuta, the Moroccan traveler who wandered these paths in the 1350. 1 glimpses the intricate web of logistics that sustained these ventures. He spoke of merchants who, like skilled astronomers, charted their courses by the stars, for the deserts held no maps etched in stone. Yet even Ibn Battuta marveled at the unrecorded routes, those shadowy paths whispered among trusted guides and never fully documented, preserving secrets that eluded both time and ink. The preparation began long before the first camel knelt to receive its load. In the quiet hours before dawn, merchants gathered in hidden courtyards, their voices a soft murmur as they consulted worn leather scrolls, and shared tales of winds that shifted like fickle spirits. Water skins, bloated and heavy, were strapped securely, each one a lifeline against the arid breath of the desert. Camels, those stoic companions, were chosen for their endurance, their humps swaying with stored fat to fuel days without graze. Ibn Battuta noted how a single miscalculation in provisioning could unravel an entire journey. Yet the merchants approached this with a wit as dry as the sands, joking that a well-packed camel was wiser than a sultan's advisor. As the caravan set forth, the sensory world unfolded in layers of calm, the creaking of saddles, leather groaning under the weight of goods, blended with the rhythmic plod of padded feet on fine-grained sand. A gentle breeze carried grains that whispered against cloaks, dusting the air with a fine, almost comforting veil that softened the harsh light. The merchants walked alongside, their cloaks billowing like silent flags, hoods pulled low to shield eyes from the glare. One could almost feel the warmth of the sun-baked earth rising through the soles of their sandals, a steady heat that promised both peril and peace. Logistics in this realm demanded a harmony between man, beast, and the unseen forces of nature. Ibn Battuta described how routes were often plotted based on ancient knowledge, passed from father to son like heirlooms. A merchant might pause at a cluster of weathered rocks, markers known only to initiates, to decide whether to veer toward the cooler shadows of distant oases or press on through the open wastes. Supplies were rationed with meticulous care. Dates and dried meats for the men, fodder for the camels, all balanced to stretch across weeks of travel. The mystery of these unrecorded routes added a layer of intrigue, for not even Ibn Battuta could fully penetrate their secrecy. He hinted at paths that vanished with the shifting dunes, guarded by nomads who shared them sparingly, leaving outsiders to wonder at the caravans that appeared like ghosts from the haze. Amid the journey, the senses wove a tapestry of tranquility. The soft rustle of fabrics rubbing against camel hair created a lullaby like cadence, punctuated by the occasional grunt of a beast adjusting its load. Sandy winds, not fierce but persistent, carried the faint aroma of distant herbs, evoking memories of verdant valleys far beyond the horizon. A merchant might reach out to steady a swaying pack, his fingers brushing the cool metal of a buckle, while the sun painted long shadows that stretched like fingers across the undulating ground. In these moments, there was a subtle wit to the proceedings, as if the desert itself played a gentle game, hiding oases just out of sight, only to reveal them at the perfect hour. Yet, even in this calming rhythm, challenges arose with a detached inevitability. Storms, as Ibn Battuta recounted from his own crossings, could blanket the route in a sea of sand, forcing halts that tested resolve. The merchants, ever pragmatic, would circle the camels into a protective huddle, their cloaks drawn tight as they waited for the winds to subside. No graphic tales of hardship intruded. Instead, the focus lingered on the consequences, like the way a delayed caravan might alter the flow of goods to distant markets. Ripples in the vast trade networks of the Mamluk era. Through it all, the unrecorded routes remained a quiet enigma. Paths that Ibn Battuta suggested were deliberately obscured to safeguard against rivals or the whims of changing rulers. As evening fell, the logistics extended to the nightly encampments. Tents of coarse fabric were unfurled with efficient grace, their poles sinking into the sand like roots seeking stability. Fires, sparked from dried camel dung, cast a warm glow that danced across the merchants' faces, illuminating expressions of quiet contentment. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of brewing tea infused with wild mint, a small luxury that soothed tired limbs. Here, in the flickering light, stories emerged not of the bustling khans or routine exchanges, but of the routes themselves, those elusive threads in the desert's fabric. Ibn Battuta, in his Rihla, spoke of hearing whispers of forgotten paths, ones that might lead to buried treasures or lost cities, adding a layer of mystery that lingered like the stars above. The camels, resting with their knees folded into the sand, emitted soft, rumbling breaths that blended with the night's hush. Merchants took turns on watch, their eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of disturbance, though the greatest threats often came from within the uncertainty of an uncharted detour. Ibn Battuta noted how some merchants relied on intuition honed over years, a sixth sense for the land's moods, much like a sailor reading the sea. This intuition wove into the logistics, turning each journey into a narrative of adaptation and wit, where a sudden shift in wind might prompt a clever rerouting, saving days of travel. Through the days that followed, the caravan pressed on, the logistics a seamless blend of planning and instinct. Sensory details enriched every step. The gritty texture of sand between toes, the metallic tang of canteens refilled at hidden springs, the distant call of a desert fox echoing like a faint melody. Ibn Battuta's observations provided glimpses into this world, such as the use of knotted ropes to measure distances, or the selection of guides fluent in the dialects of borderlands. Yet the mystery persisted, an undercurrent of unrecorded routes that tantalized the imagination, routes that might have connected Egypt to the riches of Syria, or the mysteries of the Hijaz, known only through oral traditions that faded with each generation. As the journey neared its end, with the outline of distant minarets piercing the horizon, a sense of accomplishment settled over the group. The merchants, their cloaks now dusted in shades of ochre, guided their charges with the same calm assurance that had carried them through. In this final leg, the logistics culminated in a harmonious arrival, goods intact and spirits unbroken. Ibn Battuta, reflecting on his own travels, might have nodded at such resilience, for it was the unseen mastery of these paths that sustained the Mamluk trade. And so, as the sun surrendered to twilight, casting a velvet blanket over the sands, The caravan paused on the cusp of civilization. The mystery of those unrecorded routes lingered, a gentle enigma inviting further contemplation. As the merchants prepared for whatever lay ahead, their story a thread in the larger tapestry of history. Perhaps, in the quiet of the night, one might drift into dreams of new horizons, ready for the tales yet to unfold. In the heart of 14th century Cairo, where the sun draped its golden veil over the ancient stones, the markets stirred with a rhythm as old as the Nile itself. Merchants moved like shadows in their flowing turbans, their steps measured and unhurried, as if the world beyond the city walls held no greater secrets than the wares they carried. Among them, a trader named Karim paused at his stall, his fingers brushing against heaps of peppercorns that gleamed like dark jewels in woven baskets. The air was thick with the scent of spice dust, a fine powder that danced on the breeze like whispers from distant lands, carrying hints of far-off forests and forgotten rains. Karim's turban, wrapped in layers of deep indigo, framed a face lined with the quiet wisdom of years spent on trade routes. He handled the pepper with a gentle reverence, as one might cradle a fragile memory, sifting through the grains with calloused hands that knew the value of patience. In al-Makrzi's chronicles, such spices were noted as the lifeblood of Cairo's commerce, arriving from the Malabar coast via arduous journeys that spanned oceans and deserts. Pepper, that humble yet prized commodity, commanded respect, for it warmed stews and preserved meats, turning simple meals into feasts fit for emirs. As Karim measured out portions into palm leaf packets, the dust rose in soft clouds, settling on his sleeves and evoking the earthy aroma of sun-baked earth mingled with the sharpness of the sea. Around him, the market unfolded in a tapestry of colors and textures, each stall a verse in an unending poem of exchange. Woven baskets, crafted from river reeds, creaked softly under the weight of goods cloves, and cinnamon stacked beside bundles of frankincense that released their resinous perfume with the slightest touch. The merchants, clad in turbans of varied hues, moved with a graceful economy, their voices low and melodic as they haggled over prices. One elder, his beard streaked with silver, arranged bolts of silk from Byzantine looms, the fabric shimmering like moonlight on water, cool and slippery under probing fingers. Al-Makrzi recorded how these silks, dyed in hues of crimson and sapphire, were bartered for gold dinars, their threads woven with stories of distant weavers who labored by lamplight. Yet it was the everyday items that held a subtle charm, grounding the bustle in the familiar. Jars of honey, golden and viscous, sat beside dates plump as river stones, their sweetness lingering on the tongue like a fond recollection. The air carried the faint crackle of sesame seeds being ground into tahini, a paste that evoked the warmth of home fires and shared meals. Traders in their turbans leaned over scales, balancing weights with the precision of astronomers charting stars, their movements a dance of quiet assurance. Pepper remained a favorite, its pungent kick awakening the senses, as Karim demonstrated to a young apprentice, sprinkling a pinch into his palm to release a burst of heat that faded into a soothing warmth. In al-Makrzi's accounts, the Mamluk merchants were masters of their craft, drawing from the empire's vast networks that linked Cairo to the world. Ivory tusks from African savannas rested alongside porcelain from China, their smooth surfaces cool against the skin, a testament to journeys that defied the sands and seas. The merchants spoke in hushed tones of the rarest goods, like ambergris washed up on eastern shores, its musky scent weaving through the market like an invisible thread. Yet, even in these descriptions, there lingered an air of mystery, for not all items passed through the gates were recorded in the ledgers. Whispers hinted at uncharted wares, perhaps elixirs from hidden alchemical labs, or fabrics dyed with forbidden pigments that slipped through the cracks of official tallies, their existence known only to a select few. As the day progressed, the sun's warmth gave way to a gentle haze, and the market symphony softened. Karim wiped his hands on a cloth, the spice dust leaving faint traces like echoes of distant winds. He thought of the pepper's origins, how it traveled in sacks aboard camel trains, enduring the harsh kiss of the desert before finding solace in Cairo's shaded alleys. Al-Makrzi noted the prosperity such trade brought, fueling the city's mosques and madrasas. Yet, he also alluded to the enigmatic items that evaded documentation, goods wrapped in secrecy, perhaps tokens of alliances or relics of ancient rites, their true nature lost to time. These unrecorded treasures added a layer of intrigue, a subtle puzzle that merchants like Karim pondered in quiet moments, their minds drifting like smoke from a brazier. The stalls brimmed with other delights, each item a story waiting to unfold. Leather goods, tanned to a supple finish, carried the faint scent of cured hides and the oils that preserved them, while brass lamps reflected the market's glow, their polished surfaces warm to the touch. A trader nearby arranged stacks of papyrus scrolls, their edges crisp and inked with scripts that spoke of philosophy and poetry, a nod to the intellectual currents flowing through Mamluk society. In the chronicles, al-Makrzi described how these scrolls, alongside medicinal herbs like myrrh and aloe, sustained not just bodies, but minds, their aromas mingling in a calming bouquet that eased the soul. Amid the sensory tapestry, there was a subtle wit to the merchant's world, a quiet humor in the way they navigated abundance and scarcity. Karim, for instance, would jest softly to his customers about how a single peppercorn could spice a king's banquet or a pauper's pot. Its versatility, a clever defiance of station. The woven baskets, with their intricate patterns, seemed to hold secrets of their own, their fibers whispering tales of the weavers who crafted them under starlit skies. Yet, Beneath this light-hearted veneer lay the mystery of those unrecorded goods, items that al-Makrizi hinted at, but never fully unveiled, perhaps rare gems smuggled in the dead of night, or potions said to hold the essence of dreams. Their paths, as elusive as the wind. As evening approached, the market's pace slowed, the traders wrapping their turbans a bit tighter against the cooling air. The spice dust settled, leaving a lingering fragrance that evoked memories of the day's exchanges. Karim packed away his pepper, his hands steady and content, knowing that tomorrow would bring new arrivals and fresh mysteries. In al-Makrizi's words, such cycles sustained the city's heartbeat, a gentle reminder of the world's interconnected threads. And as the shadows lengthened, thoughts turned naturally to the quiet corners of Cairo, where other stories awaited their turn in the tapestry of time. In the heart of 14th century Cairo, where the sun dipped low over the minarets and the air grew cool with the promise of night, the souk courtyards transformed into sanctuaries of shared stories and quiet kinship. Merchants, clad in simple tunics of linen dyed in earthy hues, gathered under the spreading branches of ancient fig trees, their faces softened by the fading light. These were men and women of the Mamluk realm, their lives woven through trade routes that spanned from the Nile to distant seas. Yet here they sought not commerce, but connection, a gentle rhythm of community that hummed like a distant lute. The courtyards buzzed with the subtle symphony of evening rituals, a lull that invited weary souls to rest. Stone benches, worn smooth by generations, cradled groups of traders as they unpacked modest feasts from woven baskets. The scent of freshly baked flatbreads rose from clay ovens nestled in the corners, their surfaces sizzling softly over low flames, releasing wisps of steam that carried hints of cumin and sesame. One could almost feel the warmth of those breads as they were torn apart, the golden crust yielding to fingers that had spent the day bargaining in the markets. A merchant from Aleppo, his tunic frayed at the edges from travels, passed a piece to his neighbor, a cairn spice trader with ink-stained hands, their exchange marked by a nod rather than words, a silent acknowledgement of bonds forged in the shadow of uncertainty. Conversations unfolded like slow-moving streams, their murmurs blending with the rustle of leaves overhead. Voices dipped low, carrying tales of distant ports and family left behind, each story laced with a subtle wit that eased the weight of the world. Ah, my friend, one might say with a wry smile as he dipped his bread into a bowl of lentil stew. The winds of the Red Sea are as fickle as a merchant's promise. Yet here we are, sharing what the day has spared. The stew itself was a modest marvel, its aroma of garlic and coriander drifting through the air, mingling with the earthy tang of dates being pressed between palms. Children, though not the focus of these gatherings, occasionally darted through the edges, their laughter a faint echo that added a layer of softness to the scene, reminding all that life extended beyond beyond the Sauk's stone walls. In these moments, the merchants' community revealed itself not through grand declarations, but through the everyday grace of shared meals. Historical fragments from the Cairo Geniza, those preserved letters and documents that whisper of medieval life's intricacies, speak of such gatherings as vital threads in the fabric of society. They describe how traders from diverse backgrounds, Jews, Muslims, and Christians alike, found common ground in the courtyards. Their alliances unspoken, yet profound. A Genizer record from the early 1300s recounts a group of merchants pooling resources to aid a colleague whose ship had been lost to storms. An act of solidarity that went unrecorded in official ledgers, but lived on in oral traditions. Here, under the stars beginning to pierce the twilight, such bonds were nurtured, not with contracts, but with gestures. A shared cup of mint tea, its steam rising like a gentle sigh, or the careful passing of a water pipe, its sweet tobacco smoke curling lazily into the night. The air grew cooler, carrying the faint fragrance of jasmine from nearby gardens. As the merchants settled deeper into their circles, one trader, his tunic embroidered with faint patterns from Damascus, spoke of the intangible ties that held them together, his words flowing with a calming cadence. "We are like the threads of a carpet," he mused, his voice a soft ripple, each strand from a different loom, yet woven into something enduring. Sensory details enriched these exchanges, the crisp snap of a cucumber being sliced, the warm trickle of olive oil over fresh herbs, the gentle clink of clay cups as they touched in a quiet toast. These elements created a tapestry of comfort, where the day's hardships melted away, replaced by a sense of belonging that the Geniza documents often hint at, but never fully unveil. Yet, amidst this serenity, a mystery lingered like the last light of dusk. The unwritten alliances among these merchants formed an enigma, subtle and elusive, drawing from the shadows of history. The Cairo Geniza, in its fragmented pages, alludes to secret pacts that bound traders across faiths and families. Agreements sealed not with wax, but with shared glances and whispered oaths in the courtyards. One might ponder how a Venetian merchant, dressed in a tunic adapted to local styles, could find common cause with a local coppersmith. Their alliance evident only in the way they divided spoils from a joint venture. Never committed to paper for fear of prying eyes, these bonds, historians suggest, were born from necessity in a world of shifting Mamluk politics, where overt affiliations could invite scrutiny from sultans or rivals. A Geniza letter from 1340 vaguely references a circle of trust among spice traders, where resources were discreetly shared during famines, leaving modern scholars to wonder at the intricacies of such networks. Was it a simple matter of mutual aid, or something deeper, a web of loyalties that transcended bloodlines and borders? As the evening deepened, the courtyards filled with the soothing sounds of contentment. the soft rustle of tunics as bodies shifted, the occasional murmur of approval over a well-told anecdote, the distant call of a nightingale echoing through the alleys, the merchants' faces, illuminated by the flicker of oil lamps hung from low branches, reflected a quiet resilience, their subtle wit shining through in light-hearted jabs. If only our camels could share stories as freely as we do. One quipped, drawing chuckles that rippled like gentle waves. Sensory layers added depth, the velvety texture of ripe figs being savored, the faint bitterness of strong coffee grounds underfoot, the cool breeze that carried hints of the Nile's waters miles away. These details, drawn from Genuine accounts of communal feasts, painted a picture of a society where bonds were as nourishing as the food they shared. Historical examples from the Genuine further illuminate this world. In one fragment, dated to the reign of Sultan al-Nasir Hassan, merchants are depicted organizing informal councils in the souks, where decisions on community aid were made without formal authority, relying instead on personal honor. Such practices, historians note, helped sustain the Mamluk economy during turbulent times, like the plagues of the 1340, when unwritten pacts ensured that goods reached those in need. The mystery lies in how these alliances endured, invisible to outsiders, yet pivotal to survival. A puzzle that adds a layer of intrigue to the calming narrative of shared evenings. Through it all, the tone remained one of gentle reflection, a lullaby for the soul weary from the day's labors. The merchants, in their tunics and simple gatherings, embodied a community that thrived on the unspoken, their bonds a testament to human resilience. As the stars multiplied overhead, casting a soft glow on the courtyards, one could almost drift into repose, lulled by the rhythm of shared breaths and the faint scent of baking bread still lingering in the air. And so, as the night fully embraced Cairo, these bonds of the South courtyards paved the way for deeper explorations, whispering of connections that extended far beyond the shadows into the broader tapestry of life that awaited in the dawn. In the heart of Cairo's ancient markets, under the vast, unyielding sky of 14th century Egypt, the Mamluk merchants moved with a quiet grace, their cloaks whispering against the sun-warmed stones. These traders, descendants of warriors turned commerce lords, tended to their stalls, not just with goods from distant lands, but with secrets of the body and soul, drawn from the wisdom of ages. Amid the gentle hum of the bazaar, where the air hung thick with the scent of crushed herbs and the faint, earthy dust that settled like a soft blanket, they practiced arts of healing, passed down through scrolls and whispers. It was a world where the steam from brewing potions rose like faint dreams, curling around faces lined with the quiet burdens of trade and time. The merchants, cloaked in heavy wool dyed in shades of deep indigo and muted gold, stood as guardians of health in a realm where the Nile's fertile banks brought both bounty and peril. drawing from the venerable texts of Ibn Sina, whose canon of medicine illuminated the paths of the humors. They mixed remedies with a deliberate calm, their hands steady as they measured out leaves and roots. In the dim light filtering through canvas awnings, one might see a merchant, his turban wrapped neatly against the day's warmth, grinding frankincense into a fine powder, its resinous aroma mingling with the sharper tang of myrrh. The air carried a soothing haze, where the steam from heated mortars rose in lazy spirals, carrying hints of lavender and chamomile that eased the senses, like a lullaby whispered to a restless child. These practices were born of necessity, for the merchants' journeys across the sands exposed them to ailments that crept in like shadows at dusk. Yet in their stalls, the focus was not on the hardships of the road. Those tales belonged to other corners of the city, but on the restorative rituals that restored balance to the body. A merchant might prepare a decoction for digestive woes, using fennel seeds that released a sweet, anise-like fragrance when steeped in warm water, evoking the gentle flow of the river nearby. The texts of Al-Razi guided them, teaching that such simples could temper the excesses of heat or cold in the humors, preventing the subtle imbalances that led to fevers or lethargy. With a subtle wit, one trader might quip, as he handed over a pouch of dried rose hips, that even the sternest sultan bends to the will of a well-chosen herb. His voice, a soft murmur that carried no edge, only the warmth of shared knowledge. Sensory details wove through these exchanges, creating a tapestry of comfort in the market's embrace. The dusty air, fine as talc from the desert winds, settled on wooden counters and the merchant's fingertips, a reminder of the vast world beyond. Yet it was the herbs that dominated, their textures and scents painting vivid pictures. The velvety leaves of mint, crushed to release a cool, invigorating essence that tingled on the tongue. The rough bark of cinnamon, its spicy warmth lingering like a distant memory of spice routes. In the quieter hours, as the sun dipped low, a merchant might brew a tea from hibiscus flowers, the liquid turning a deep crimson in clay cups, its tart flavor a gentle nudge toward vitality. These rituals, rooted in the precision of medieval Islamic medicine, offered not just relief, but a moment of peace, where the steam's soft caress on the skin whispered of healing's gentle art. Amid this serene rhythm, there lingered a mystery, one that added a layer of intrigue to the merchant's craft. The enigma of lost remedy recipes, recipes that had vanished like whispers in the wind. In the great libraries of Cairo, illuminated manuscripts spoke of formulations once celebrated, drawn from the works of Ibn al-Nafis, who advanced understandings of the heart's circulation. Yet some recipes, perhaps scribbled on fragile papyrus or passed in secret codes, had slipped into oblivion. One such was a balm said to mend the spirit as well as the flesh, a blend of aloe and rare eastern resins that could soothe the deepest weariness. The merchants spoke of it in hushed tones, their voices carrying a detached curiosity, as if recounting a fable rather than a loss. It was known to ease the traveler's melancholy. One might say his eyes distant, but its exact measure faded with the one who guarded it, leaving only echoes in the steam. This mystery, untouched by the routines of daily trade or the logistics of journeys, added a subtle depth to their practices, a reminder that knowledge, like the herbs themselves, could bloom and then disappear, its absence a quiet puzzle for the ages. In their stalls, the merchants adapted these ancient texts to the needs of their peers, focusing on preventive care that aligned the body's elements. For instance, to counter the oppressive heat of Egyptian summers, they prepared infusions of coriander seeds, their citrusy scent cutting through the day's heaviness like a cool breeze off the Nile. The process was methodical, almost meditative. Seeds ground in stone mortars, releasing oils that filled the air with a fresh, invigorating aroma, while the merchants' cloaks rustled softly, their movements as deliberate as the turning of a page in a sacred text. Drawing from Al-Razi's treatises, they understood that such remedies could prevent the buildup of harmful vapors, promoting a harmony that allowed one to face the world with renewed vigor. A touch of wit might surface in their explanations, as a merchant offered a vial of thyme-infused oil for minor aches, noting with a faint smile, "This little elixir has outlasted empires, for it knows the secret of persistence." The sensory world of these practices was rich and enveloping, designed to lull the mind into a state of ease. The feel of herbs between fingers, crisp basil leaves, or the silky petals of marigold provided a tactile comfort, while the faint sounds of bubbling waters and the occasional clink of brass tools created a backdrop of gentle symphony. In the late afternoon, as shadows lengthened, the market took on a dreamlike quality, the dusty air now laced with the sweet smoke of smoldering myrrh, its resinous warmth wrapping around visitors like an invisible cloak. These details, drawn from the lived experiences documented in medieval texts, highlighted how health was not merely a matter of cure, but of immersion in the world's subtle offerings. Yet even in this haven of healing, grim realities occasionally cast their shadows, approached with a detached poise that focused on outcomes rather than ordeal. The merchants knew that without proper care, imbalances could lead to prolonged weakness, a consequence they addressed through fortified tonics made from dates and ginger, their spicy sweet blend providing sustenance. Ibn Sina's writings emphasized the importance of moderation, and so they prepared these mixtures with care, ensuring that the warm, honeyed flavors offered not just nourishment, but a buffer against the world's harsher edges. In such moments, the mystery of the lost recipes took on a poignant note, as if those vanished formulas held keys to averting even greater losses, their absence a gentle enigma that invited reflection rather than despair. As evening approached, the merchants would pack their herbs with the same care they extended to their craft, the air growing cooler, the scents fading into the night. This world of health practices, so intricately tied to the rhythms of life in Mamluk Egypt, stood as a testament to the enduring wisdom of the past. And as the stars began to emerge, one might ponder how these rituals, with their soothing aromas and textures, paved the way for future discoveries, transitioning seamlessly to tales of innovation in the chapters yet to unfold. In the hushed glow of a Cairo dawn, where the Nile's whispers mingled with the first calls of the muezzin, Mamluk merchants stirred from their slumbers. These traders, clad in simple tunics of fine linen, dyed in earthy hues, moved through the city's labyrinthine streets toward the great mosques that stood as timeless sanctuaries. It was the 14th century, an era when commerce and faith intertwined like the intricate patterns of a Persian carpet. And in the shadows of these sacred halls, men of trade sought solace in rituals passed down through generations, drawing from the chronicles of al-Makrzi, who meticulously recorded the rhythms of daily life. We glimpse a world where prayer was not merely duty, but a gentle balm for the soul, weary from bargaining and barter. The merchants arrived at the mosque just as the sun crested the horizon, their tunics swaying softly with each step, the fabric whispering against the cool stone pavements. Al-Makrzi noted how these men, often bearing the faint scent of spices from distant lands, would pause at the entrance to perform the ritual ablution. Water from ancient fountains trickled over their hands and faces, its cool touch a refreshing prelude to devotion, evoking the purity of a desert oasis after a long journey. Inside, the air grew thick with the subtle aroma of incense, wisps of frankincense curling upward like faint dreams, their smoky tendrils dancing in the shafts of light, filtering through arched windows. The merchants knelt on woven mats, their bodies forming a sea of bowed heads and folded hands, as if the very earth beneath them pulsed with reverence. Soft chants filled the space, a melodic hum that rose and fell like the gentle waves of the Nile. Al-Makrzi described these prayers as a symphony of voices, where the merchants recited verses from the Quran in tones so low and soothing they seemed to cradle the heart. Each word carried the weight of centuries, a lullaby of faith that eased the burdens of commerce. One could almost feel the warmth of the sun-warmed stones underfoot, their surfaces smoothed by the feet of countless pilgrims before. The merchants, with their calloused hands pressed to the ground, embodied a quiet dignity, their tunics embroidered subtly at the hems, with threads of gold hinting at the prosperity they had garnered from silk routes and spice trades. Yet, worn humbly for this sacred hour. As the prayers progressed, the atmosphere deepened into a serene rhythm. Al-Makrzi recounted how, during the midday salat, the merchants would align their rows with mathematical precision, drawing from the geometric harmony that defined Mamluk architecture. The soft rustle of their garments, a whisper of linen against wool, blended with the distant cooing of pigeons nesting in the minarets. Incense burners, crafted from brass and etched with floral motifs, released spirals of scent that evoked memories of far off. Markets the sharp tang of myrrh mingling with the sweetness of rosewater. In these moments, the traders' faces softened, their eyes closed to the world, as if they were drifting on a current of divine tranquility. A subtle wit lingered in their devotions, for al-Makrzi observed how some merchants, ever the negotiators, would offer silent bargains with the divine, whispering pleas for prosperous deals wrapped in verses of gratitude. Yet, amid this peaceful cadence, there existed an undercurrent of mystery, the unwritten rituals that al-Makrzi hinted at, but never fully unveiled. These were the secret practices, passed orally from father to son, that eluded the ink of historians. Perhaps it was the way certain merchants, upon completing their prayers, would trace invisible patterns on the mosque floor with their fingers, symbols drawn from ancient Sufi traditions, yet never recorded. Al-Makrzi mentioned such enigmas in passing, noting how these gestures, performed with a reverent hush, seemed to invoke protections against the uncertainties of trade. The air would grow still, as if the incense itself held its breath, and one might catch a faint, elusive fragrance, not the frankincense of the burners, but something wilder, like the scent of desert winds carrying whispers of forgotten lore. This mystery lent an air of intrigue to their devotions, a gentle puzzle that invited contemplation rather than revelation. For in a world of ledgers and contracts, some truths remained veiled, preserved in the hearts of the faithful. The merchants' prayers extended beyond the mosque walls, weaving into the fabric of their daily lives, as al-Makrzi so carefully documented. In the late afternoons, they gathered for the Asr prayer, their tunics now dusted with the day's travels, the soft fabric carrying the faint grit of the streets. The chants evolved here, slower and more introspective, like a lullaby, easing the transition from labor to rest. One could hear the subtle shift in tone, the voices dipping into a deeper resonance, accompanied by the distant clink of prayer beads slipping through fingers. These beads, smooth and cool, were often carved from olive wood or imported stones, their rhythmic click a counterpoint to the chants, evoking the steady beat of a heart-finding peace. Al-Makrzi noted how the merchants favored specific mosques, such as the one near the old gates, where the air was perfumed by gardens of jasmine that bloomed in hidden courtyards, their petals releasing a sweet, intoxicating aroma that mingled with the incense. In these gatherings, the sensory tapestry grew richer. The warmth of bodies pressed together in prayer created a communal heat, a gentle embrace that contrasted with the cool marble floors. Light played across the scene, casting elongated shadows that danced like silent companions, while the faint echo of footsteps from the outer halls added a layer of depth to the chants. Al-Makrzi's accounts reveal how some merchants incorporated elements of personal devotion, such as murmuring invocations for safe voyages. Their words carried on breaths scented with mint from midday meals. There was a subtle wit in this, as if the divine were an old friend with whom one shared knowing glances, acknowledging the follies of human endeavor with a wry smile. As evening descended, the Maghrib prayer brought a new serenity. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose, and the merchants, their tunics now softened by the day's wear, knelt once more. Al-Makrazi described how the incense was replenished, fresh wisps rising to greet the twilight, their fragrance evoking the closing of a day's chapter. The chants here were softer still, a whispered melody that seemed to dissolve into the night, leaving only the echo of peace. Yet the mystery persisted, the unwritten rituals that surfaced in these twilight hours. Perhaps it was the way some merchants lingered after the prayers, tracing the air with open palms, as if gathering invisible blessings, a practice Al-Makrazi speculated might stem from pre-Islamic customs, though he could only guess. This enigma, untouched by parchment, added a layer of allure, a reminder that faith, like the merchant's hidden ledgers, held secrets meant for the soul alone. Through the night, the Isha prayer marked the final act of devotion. Al-Makrazi noted how the mosque transformed under the stars, the chants fading into a profound silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of tunics or the distant call of a night bird. The air, now cool and still, carried the lingering scent of incense, a comforting veil that enveloped the worshippers. In these quiet moments, the merchants reflected on their day's trades, their prayers a gentle suture for any wounds of loss or uncertainty. The mystery of the unwritten rituals wove through it all, an unspoken thread that bound their practices to something eternal, beyond the reach of historians. As the night deepened, the merchants departed, their footsteps echoing faintly into the streets, leaving the mosque to its solitude. Yet in the calm that followed, one could sense the continuity of their faith, a bridge to the morrow's dawn. From these rituals, we turn now to the broader tapestry of Mamluk life, where the threads of commerce and spirit intertwined in ways yet to unfold. In the soft glow of a 14th century Cairo dawn, the ancient city stirred like a gentle breath through its labyrinthine streets. The Nile's distant murmur blended with the first calls of merchants in the souks, where young children of Mamluk trading families began their day. These boys and girls, clad in simple tunics of linen dyed in earthy hues, moved with quiet purpose among the stalls. Their garments, woven from threads as fine as whispers, hung loosely over small frames, the fabric brushing against skin warmed by the rising sun. Here, in the heart of the bustling markets, they assisted their elders, their lives a tapestry of subtle routines woven from the everyday wonders of commerce and childhood. The air carried the faint scent of cumin and frankincense, drifting like a lullaby from spice-laden sacks piled high. These children, often no more than 8 or 9 years old, handled tasks with a careful grace that belied their age. A boy might arrange soft baskets of dates, their woven reeds yielding under his fingers like the petals of a desert flower, while a girl balanced trays of polished beads, their cool surfaces clicking in rhythmic harmony with the market's hum. The sounds were a soothing symphony, the low drone of bargaining voices, the occasional flutter of pigeons overhead, and the gentle rustle of fabrics swaying in the breeze. Each sense painted a picture of a world both vibrant and serene, where the weight of family legacy rested lightly on young shoulders, drawing from the fragments preserved in the Cairo Geniza, those scattered documents of daily life from the Jewish communities, intertwined with the broader Mamluk society. We glimpse the contours of these children's existence. The Geniza records speak of families like the Ben Ezra traders, where children learned the arts of commerce, not through formal edicts, but through quiet observation and small duties. A child might sit cross-legged beside a stall, sorting herbs with fingers stained green from mint leaves, their aroma mingling with the warm earthiness of the ground beneath. These tasks were not burdensome, but rhythmic, like the steady pulse of the city itself, fostering a sense of quiet accomplishment amid the day's flow. Yet amid this calm, there lingered an unspoken mystery, the unrecorded games of these merchant children. While the Geniza offers glimpses of adult transactions and familial notes, it leaves the playful world of youth shrouded in shadow, a subtle enigma that invites gentle speculation. Perhaps in the cooler hours before the market peaked, these children invented games hidden from the scribes' pens, games born of the souks, hidden corners. One might imagine a boy tracing patterns in the dust with a stick, creating maps of imaginary caravans that wound through the alleys, his tunic's hem trailing like a flag in the wind. Or a group of girls, their laughter soft as the coo of doves, weaving stories around a pile of discarded threads, turning them into rivers or roads in a game without name or rule. The market's sensory tapestry enveloped them, offering a buffer against the harsher realities of life in Mamluk Cairo. The feel of cool clay jars under small palms, slick with the morning's dew, or the warm glow of sunlight filtering through awnings dyed in saffron yellows, all wove into their daily rhythm. These details, drawn from the Geniza's accounts of household inventories and personal letters, reveal how children navigated a world of textures and scents. A tunic, perhaps mended with threads from a trader's surplus, might carry the faint, comforting scent of myrrh, a remnant of exotic goods passed through their hands. In these moments, the children's lives unfolded with a subtle wit, as if the city itself whispered jokes through the wind, how a basket of figs might tumble like wayward stars, or a stray cat might mimic a merchant's stealthy negotiations. Historical echoes from the Geniza suggest that such children were not mere helpers, but inheritors of a legacy. Their small tunic symbols of continuity in a city of flux. Records mention youths like those in the accounts of a certain merchant family, where a child's role in preparing goods for sale was noted in passing, alongside lists of spices and fabrics. Yet the mystery persists. What games did they play when the stalls quieted? Did they race through the narrow lanes, their feet padding softly on packed earth, pretending to be swift messengers from distant lands? Or perhaps they crafted tales from the market's discards, turning a broken bead into a talisman, or a scrap of cloth into a sail for imaginary ships on the Nile. This unrecorded realm adds a layer of intrigue, a gentle puzzle that softens the edges of their structured days, much like the way twilight softens the Sauk's sharp outlines. As the sun climbed higher, the children moved with an innate poise, their tunics fluttering in the warm currents of air, laced with the sweetness of baking bread and the tang of preserved lemons. The Geniza fragments, with their meticulous details of family life, hint at how these young ones balanced duty and delight. A girl might pause to trace the grain of a wooden crate, its surface worn smooth by countless hands, feeling the history embedded in its fibers. Such sensory experiences grounded them, offering a calming counterpoint to the city's pulse. Subtle wit emerged in the way a child might outsmart a curious monkey pilfering dates, their laughter a hushed ripple that echoed the market's own clever rhythms. In these unassuming lives, the mystery of child games deepened, a thread of wonder woven through the fabric of daily existence. Perhaps inspired by the traders' tales of far-off places, they enacted scenes in hidden courtyards, using soft cushions as mountains or baskets as boats. The Geniza, while silent on such matters, indirectly illuminates through its records of festivals and family gatherings, where joy must have spilled into play. This enigma, distinct and untouched by the bonds of community or the grind of trade, invites a detached reflection on the consequences of an era where childhood's fleeting moments went unchronicled, lost like whispers in the wind. The afternoon light, golden and mellow, cast long shadows across the Sauk's, where children continued their tasks with a lullaby like serenity. The hum of the market persisted, a backdrop to their quiet explorations, and the soft baskets they handled seemed to hold not just goods, but fragments of untold stories, drawing from historical examples in the Geniza, such as the accounts of a merchant's ledger noting a child's assistance in inventory. We see how these young lives were integral, yet ephemeral. Their tunics, simple and unadorned, spoke of a world where every sense was attuned to the subtle dance of survival and imagination. As evening approached, the mystery lingered like a faint perfume, reminding us that not all of history's treasures are preserved in ink. These children, with their small hands and quiet wit, embodied the gentle rhythm of Cairo's heart, a rhythm that flowed onward, carrying the seeds of future tales. And now, as the day's warmth fades, our thoughts drift toward the next chapter, where other stories await in the shadows of the night. In the hushed glow of a 14th century Egyptian dawn, Nil's gentle murmur blends with the first stirrings of Cairo's ancient lanes. Merchants of the Mamluk realm emerge like whispers from the shadows. These traders, bearers of silks and spices from distant horizons, clad themselves in garments that speak of both utility and elegance. A tapestry woven from the threads of history itself. Imagine the soft glide of a silk turban catching the light, its folds cradling the head like a cloud, while leather satchels hang at their sides, heavy with the weight of untold stories. Here, amid the cool stone arches and the faint scent of jasmine on the breeze, we linger on the quiet allure of their attire, far from the clamor of routs or exchanges, inviting a peaceful reflection on fabrics that rustled through time. The silk turban, that crown of the Mamluk merchant, begins our gentle exploration, a swirl of color and texture that frames the face with subtle grace. Wrapped meticulously around the head, it unfurls in layers of fine, imported silk from Persian looms, the fabric whispering against itself with each measured step. Its surface, smooth as polished marble under fingertips, carries a sheen that dances in the sunlight filtering through latticed windows, a play of light that soothes the eye like ripples on a tranquil pond. These turbans, often dyed in deep crimsons or soft indigos, were not mere adornments, but markers of status, their colors echoing the merchants' journeys across the Mediterranean and beyond. Archaeological digs in the sands of Fustat have unearthed fragments of such silks, preserved in the dry embrace of time, revealing intricate patterns of geometric motifs and floral vines that must have caught the breeze like autumn leaves. One can almost hear the faint rustle as a merchant adjusts his turban, the silk sliding coolly against skin warmed by the day's first rays. A sound as delicate as a sigh in the quiet courtyards of Cairo. Beneath this headpiece, the merchant's robe flows like a river's current, a long tunic of linen or cotton, often lined with silk for those who could afford such luxuries. These garments, known as kamis or jubba, draped to the ankles in generous folds, allowing for the ease of movement through crowded souks without the harsh tug of fabric. The linen, woven from the flax fields along the Nile, carried a subtle, earthy scent, fresh as the river's mist, while the silk beneath added a layer of warmth that enveloped the wearer like a gentle embrace. Sensory memories linger here. The soft brush of the robe against legs as a merchant pauses in the shade, the faint creak of seams tested by the satchel's weight, or the cool whisper of air through the fabric on a breezy evening. Historical records, drawn from the careful excavations at sites like the citadel of Salah al-Din, show that these robes were sometimes embroidered with metallic threads, their glint a subtle nod to prosperity, yet always practical for the Egyptian heat. A merchant might run his hand along the hem, feeling the slight give of the weave, a tactile reminder of the artisans who labored by lamplight, their needles tracing patterns lost to the ages. And then there are the leather satchels, those faithful companions slung across the shoulder, their straps worn smooth by constant use, crafted from the hides of goats or camels, tanned in the traditional methods of the region. These bags exuded a rich, dusty aroma, a blend of sun-baked leather, and the faint spice of oils applied to preserve them. Picture the satchel surface, etched with simple tooling that caught the light in subtle ridges, its flap secured by a leather thong that clicked softly with each adjustment. Merchants carried them with an effortless poise, the weight settling against the hip like an old friend, the leather creaking ever so gently with the rhythm of their stride. From archaeological finds in the debris of medieval workshops, such as those uncovered in the Darb al-Amr district, we know these satchels were designed for durability, their interiors lined with cloth to protect delicate goods like rolled parchments or small vials of perfume. Yet, amid this practicality, a mystery unfolds, an enigma of lost designs that teases the imagination. In the